I request Dr. Neeta Saboo Madam to invite our speaker, Dr. Sushant Mane, for this session.
Good afternoon, one and all. I think TB introduction goes with the name of Dr. Sushant Mane. He is the associate professor at JJ Hospital. He is a WHO member also for the working group on adolescent and pediatric TB. And he is the state in charge for pediatric TB also. So we just invite Dr. Sushant Mane to take over and start his talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, organizers of TAPICON, for having me here today. So, lot has been discussed about pediatric TB time and again over a period of so many years. And when I was given this topic, so I was really, wondering, would people be really interested to know what is going on in tuberculosis? And today being the last day of the session, I mean, TAPICON, people are, in the sense of they want to go back home. So before I actually go into my cases or go into what is new in pediatric TB, I would like to throw some light so that people become alert and they are alert for the next 30 minutes what I'm going to talk about. So if you see the Global TB Report 2020, India constitutes 26% of the tuberculosis load, which is almost 1/4. India constitutes 36% of the global mortality of TB, which is again more than 1/4. And as far as we are concerned, pediatrics accounts again for 1/4 of the global cases of tuberculosis, which are reported all over the world. Now, if this is not enough, there are 6 countries all over the world who are reporting consistently since the last 3 years more than 100 cases of pediatric MDR TB, and India stands first in it. Since 2019 and 20, we are having almost 50% of our kids who are detected with MDR TB, and I think this is a big eye-opener. If we go towards the reporting, we had a reporting which was consistently increasing in our country from 2017 to 19. We went up from 18 to 24 lakhs. Then came COVID, and because of that, we fell down again to 18 lakhs. This was because all of us knew that we were under lockdown. People were not coming for us to take the treatment. What does it imply? So this was a study which was published in April 2021 this year. So because of the lockdown, there was a 42% decrease in the reporting. There was a 80% decrease in the new TB cases which were diagnosed. And it was a mathematical model was applied, and it was postulated that all this is going to lead, because of the lockdown and the 25% reduction in detection, an additional of 6.5 million cases and probably 1.5 million deaths in the period between 20 to 25, and that has pushed us back 5 to 6 years in our fight against TB. So this is a big concern, and as we saw right in the first thing, India constitutes more than 1/4. So most of this chunk is going to be with us, and we have to deal with it. So not only general pediatricians, hematologists, neurologists, endocrinologists, everybody is going to see TB. There are some of my seniors who are sitting here who have been referring cases to us, and they will agree in the last 5-6 years they had not seen so much of TB which they are seeing in the last 1 year. So going ahead, so this was a case, 6-year-old boy, Jignesh, fever and cough since 1 month, and weight loss, weight was 12 kgs, he had pallor, right-sided crepes. That was the X-ray of the patient which had a right opacification complete. Hemoglobin was 9, the counts were okay. The tuberculosis skin test, which is called as MANTU, was 15 millimeters. USG thorax had a pleural effusion which we tapped. It was an exudative effusion, 450 cells, proteins of 4.8. Do we start anti-tuberculous therapy? What is the opinion of this house? Yes or no? Or do we want to do something else? Excellent. So this is the first part, what we already know about my topic. Yes, we have to do gene expert. Why I ask this question? Because still today in a place like Mumbai, we get referrals where gene expert is not being done. There was a 15-year-old female who was referred to us yesterday only in our TB OPD, where everything is there, X-ray is having a big cavity, and she started on first-line treatment without the gene expert report. Okay, so yes, we did a pleural fluid gene expert, we did an induced sputum gene expert, both were negative. This was a pleural TB case. So in such patients, do we wait for culture or other test, or do we need to start treatment in such patients? So this is our question. Yes. So what issues we want to assess in this case is, when do we say it is a presumptive TB case? When do we label it as a probable TB and start treatment? What are the role of other ancillary investigations like a IGRA or a TST or ESR? So I'll answer the third and the fourth question first. TST, that is our MANTU test, and IGRA are tests for detecting TB infection. It is not for detecting active TB. So even if we are doing that test, if it is positive, it does not tell us whether the patient has active TB in most of the cases. Yes, pleural TB is one place where it acts as a corroborative evidence, because most of the times we don't get a bacteriological positive in a case of pleural TB. What about, so the only advantage of IGRA over a TST is it is a blood-based test. You get results very early, within a day or maybe 2 days, and it is not affected by a previous BCG vaccination. Otherwise, the information is same. The patient has TB infection. We do not know whether he has active disease. Role of ESR, again non-specific. It could be elevated in any viral, bacterial, tuberculous, or even non-infectious conditions. ADA, again highly non-specific, because it is a lymphocytic enzyme. Because it is a lymphocytic enzyme, any condition which causes an elevation of lymphocytes are going to get ADA positive. So again, yes, in pleural TB, again like TST, it acts as a corroborative evidence. Might be this is the case of tuberculosis. So coming to when we say it is a presumptive TB, we all know this. Any patient who is having a constellation of symptoms of fever, persistent fever, cough, and a history of weight loss for more than 2 weeks, he becomes a TB suspect. The weight loss has to be minimum 5% of weight loss in the past 3 months. Lack of weight gain is also significant, and therefore a history of weight is very important. We try and get the previous records. In the era when schools were working, we used to check the school records of the child. In a symptomatic child, even if there is a contact with an extrapulmonary TB case, we take it as a high suspicion of presumptive TB, because around 30% of extrapulmonary TBs may have a hidden pulmonary focus. Coming to a presumptive extrapulmonary TB, again, any constellation of symptoms related to any system, whether it is a back pain, it is a neck pain, slow onset meningitis, a painless swelling in the lymph node anywhere which is lasting for more than 2 weeks, becomes a high suspicion of TB or a presumptive TB. And certain category of patients, like those on immunosuppressants, steroid therapies, anti-cancers, malignancies, HIV children, we have to have a periodic and regular screening for TB in these children, because they are high risk of getting tuberculosis. So what has changed? So initially it was diagnosis of TB mainly on radiology, sometimes on smear or something like that. Now today the diagnosis has two components. The diagnosis has to be confirmed and the diagnosis has to be complete. So the confirmed diagnosis is by detection of Mycobacterium tuberculosis in any of the samples, whatever we can get, and complete diagnosis is detection of an upfront rifampicin resistance. This has been changed by WHO, by India, way back in 2014-15, and we have to implement in all our patients. Then there is a concept of universal DST. Now what do we mean by universal DST is, universal does not mean DST for all drugs. Universal component means we have to do a DST for each and every patient who is a presumptive case of TB, whatever is the sample we are having access to. So initially we used to do DST only for rifampicin. Now the program says we have to do a DST for rifampicin. In addition to that, all patients have to be tested for at least a fluoroquinolone resistance, because the background rate of fluoroquinolone resistance in India is anywhere between 36 to 43%, again which is very high. So how do we do this? If we have a smear positive, if we have a slide positive, we directly do a LPA on that smear and we can get fluoroquinolone resistance. If we don't have a smear positive, we are a bit unlucky. We have to wait till the culture flags positive, and on that a molecular test or a DST can be done where we can get a fluoroquinolone resistance. But the message here is universal resistance checking has to be there for rifampicin and at least fluoroquinolone at the first instance for all the patients wherever it is possible. What is available at present with us in the program? We have our expert MTB-RIF, which is our gene expert, which everybody knows. We have a TrueNat. Now what is the difference between gene expert and TrueNat is, TrueNat is a point of care test which is basically useful at the primary health levels in the district areas or a sub-district areas where it does not require an elaborate lab setup. It is a simple battery operated test. The principle is same as gene expert. We get the result within 2 hours. We get Mycobacterium detected and we get rifampicin resistance, so that it is easy to use in a country like India where we have so much of population staying in rural areas. A little bit of chance of contamination, but then if it is done by a technically trained person, the results are as similar to as a gene expert. Line probe assay, as we just discussed, if we are lucky enough, if we get a smear positive on sputum, we can directly do a line probe assay on the smear positive slide, or else in case of smear negative pulmonary TB or all our cases of extrapulmonary TB like a CSF or lymph node or abdominal sample, we do an LPA when the culture flags positive. Cultures, now we have only midget cultures. Midget are the mycobacterial growth indicator. They are all liquid cultures. The advantage is we get the results as fast as within a period of 2 to 3 weeks sometimes. Solid cultures used to take anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. So in liquid cultures, we can get a result as rapidly as in 3 weeks, and the waiting period is 6 weeks. Till the time 6 weeks incubation is done, the lab will not report it as a negative culture. And once the culture flags, again on the culture we can do a molecular test like an LPA to look for resistance, or we can do a traditional drug sensitivity testing, which is a phenotypic test, where we can test every drug which is used for tuberculosis, the first line as well as second line drugs. What are the newer tests? So Expert Ultra is already there in India. In program, it is being offered at certain sites. In Mumbai, it is definitely offered because Mumbai is the epicenter of DRTB. Otherwise, in private labs, it is readily available. The advantage of Ultra over a Gene Expert is it is more sensitive. So it is a boon to pediatricians because samples, especially extrapulmonary samples where the bacterial load may be less, they come out positive on Ultra, like pleural fluid or maybe an abdominal node or a ascitic fluid sample. Now this is Expert MDR or XDR. This test has been approved by WHO since 2020. It is ready to come up in the market. Some labs have already started doing. This is same as Gene Expert. You get the report within 2 hours. In addition to rifampicin, we would also get resistance upfront to 3 of the other drugs, which is isoniazid, fluoroquinolones, and our injectables, that is amikacin and kanamycin. So this is again a very big boon because we will be upfront detecting cases of MDR, pre-XDR and also XDR, and we can start the therapy. We don't have to wait for culture to come. Now LAM is a lipoarabinomannan. Now it is a component of the mycobacterial cell wall. Now this test is especially important for patients who are HIV positive. Now all mycobacterial active infections, the patients release this lipoarabinomannan in sufficient quantities in urine. And therefore, when we have an HIV positive child where sometimes the sample collection would be difficult or it would be, the lab access would be difficult, this is just like a strip test as how we do for a urine pregnancy test. We have strips available, you dip it in the urine and it will flag off if it is positive. So it is a very early indicator where in HIV positive patients you can start treatment for tuberculosis. Obviously with this we also have to send the samples for our Gene Expert and culture because this will only diagnose that the patient is having TB. It won't diagnose, it won't give access to a universal DST. Now the question is, can we use this in general population? No, because the basis of this test is lower the CD4 count, the test sensitivity goes up, and therefore right now as far as the use is concerned, WHO has validated it only for patients who are immunocompromised, especially HIV positive patients, so not to be used for general population. And the famous whole genome sequencing or genetic sequencing. Now I want to spend half a minute here. We have been seeing so many of pediatricians who are ordering upfront whole genome sequencing because it is easily and readily available in a city like Mumbai, which is even so in other metros like Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore. What happens is we get a whole genome sequencing report and it may report resistance to say 6 drugs or 8 drugs. But what happens is whole genome sequencing, I'll give you an example of rifampicin. Rifampicin, the commonest mutation seen is RPO beta, but there are 6 other mutations which can cause rifampicin resistance. The commonest mutation of isoniazid is INHA and CATG, but there are 8 to 9 other mutations which can lead to isoniazid resistance. Now if your whole genome sequencing is going to list all these mutations, now suppose if INHA and CATG is not detected, some 3rd or 4th mutation is detected, it may not be actually the epidemiological pattern which is going on in India or your country right now. So if we want to order a whole genome sequencing, we have to have a strong reason why we want to order this test. At present, we are doing for all our difficult pre-XDRs or XDRs because it is still under research mode. WHO has still not given it a go ahead to be done for each and every patient. It is only for research mode because they are collecting pool of data of all the mutations and then they will come up with the study results in future. So what should be the order of preference? How should we order the test as far as our patient is concerned? So obviously when we have a sample, the first test has to be a Gene Expert or a TrueNat, which will give us result in 2 hours. The second is definitely an LPA. If we have a slide positive, we will get result in 48 to 72 hours. The third would be a liquid culture. Once the culture is positive, we can do a liquid, we can do a LPA DST, that is a molecular DST. That is a third choice. We can get result in 2 to 4 weeks. And then, as we said, the classical phenotypic DST, where we put the drugs inside the medium and check for all the MICs, that is the fourth option. Solid cultures we are not using now, again because of the simple reason that they take too much time for the cultures to come positive. But yes, definitely solid cultures are done as far as program is concerned for high risk population. pediatrics is considered as a high-risk population. With each culture, with each MGIT culture, even a solid culture is planted because they want to compare at the end. Sometimes, the problems happen with MGIT, there is a contamination, then they compare it with the solid. And there is a small percentage of patients, especially in adult, who are having NTMs, where the solid culture would not grow, and then they would require liquid culture would not grow, they would require a solid culture for extended incubation, say for 12 weeks or 14 weeks, to see if it is a NTM or non-tuberculous mycobacteria. If any of the sample is positive with any of the tests, it is considered as a microbiologically confirmed tuberculosis, and we can start treatment. Once we think of treatment, what is the treatment right now? Before going to the treatment, what has the preliminary change which has happened as far as the diagnosis of pulmonary TB is concerned? So it is not like that any patient who comes to us who is having signs and symptoms of TB, we do a knee-jerk response and directly do a gene export. The first thing is X-ray chest. If the X-ray chest is highly suggestive of TB, which is either a cavity or a miliary pattern or a node, then we do a proper sputum. If it is positive, it is a confirmed case. Depending upon whether it is resistant or sensitive, we start treatment to the child. If the NAT is negative, we try to look at other samples. For example, the patient may have a huge lymph node which we can sample. We can again attempt a second expectorated sputum in the child and send the sample again. If it is positive, it becomes a confirmed case. Even after doing all this exercise, it is negative, then we can label this child as a probable TB. So the point to be taken here is we are doing the exercise, so much exercise. We are sending the sample first. If it is negative, we are trying to repeat the sample. We are trying to sample it from some other place. Even if it is negative and there is no other likely diagnosis, very high suspicion of TB, then we are justified in starting the treatment on empirical basis. Of course, cases of CNS TB are an exception to this because we can't wait for so much time. We have to start empirically and then we can keep on investigating for this microbiological diagnosis. If the X-ray shows non-specific shadows, we give a trial of antibiotics for 7 to 10 days. Please do not use quinolones, please do not use linezolid. The only antibiotics approved are either amoxicillin or amoxicillin clavulanic acid. Even if after that there are persistent shadows, then we have to sample the patient and stand for gene export. The third category is X-ray is normal. These are the patients where there is a high suspicion of extrapulmonary TB because he is having a symptom complex of TB, but the X-ray is normal. We have to take help of an expert, jointly manage the case. It could be sitting anywhere into the abdomen, sometimes into the kidney, sometimes a deep psoas abscess, like that. And then you proceed with the investigations. As far as treatment of drug-sensitive TB is concerned, now a program has only two components. One is treatment for drug-sensitive TB and another is for drug-resistant TB. So it is a daily therapy, 2 months of HRZE plus 4 months of HRE to be given daily. In cases of CNS tuberculosis, bone and joint tuberculosis, these are difficult cases. We can extend the continuation phase to a complete therapy of 1 year. So that depends upon how is your patient faring. So 9 to 12 months is the therapy which is recommended for either musculoskeletal, especially osteoarticular TB and your CNS TB. Streptomycin has been withdrawn, category 2 has been withdrawn since December 2018. Please, we have to refrain from writing streptomycin. Even in 2021, this is 3 years down the line, we are seeing prescriptions coming in with streptomycin. If the patient is not responding, streptomycin is added and the patient is referred to us. So we should stop doing all these things. And MDR patients, try to refer and manage in coordination with the nearest district or nodal DRTB center. Thane has a Thane Civil, which has a district nodal TB center. Navi Mumbai has NNMC, and we have all these centers. It is always better to use the fixed drugs combinations. Why? Because individual tablets are too cumbersome to take. So if we have combination, the weight bands are given by the program. For example, if a child is a 20 kg child, we can give 4 pediatric tablets and 4 ethambutol. So the advantage of this is these are all dispersible tablets. So if they are put in milk or water, they dissolve and the child has to just drink it. These are not inferior quality drugs. All of the drugs are supplied by Macleods Pharma to the program, and the patients are getting very well treated. So there is a notion that what kind of drugs or what quality of drugs would be there with the program, all that is out. These are all good quality drugs. So it is always good to use an FDC instead of a separate drugs. Pyridoxine has to be given whether we are treating a DSTB or a drug resistant TB. If we are treating a DSTB, we give 10 milligrams for less than 1 year and 20 milligrams for older children daily till the patient is on anti-TB therapy. if we are dealing with drug-resistant TB, because drug-resistant TB has lot many drugs which can cause neuropathy, therefore we are giving a little higher drug, a higher dose of 50 to 100 milligram for all patients. How do we monitor? Routine X-rays not indicated, only if the patient is worsening any time during the course of treatment, or at the end of 4 weeks or 1 month of our treatment, the patient is not showing any signs of improvement or satisfactory improvement. That is the indication we can do an X-ray. Otherwise, we can do an X-ray only at the end of 6 months. We have to look at other comorbid conditions like HIV, SAM, especially malnutrition, because what happens is if we don't take care of these conditions, the child is not going to put on weight, and then we keep on thinking that the child is not responding. And definitely check for adherence every time, whether the patient is taking the right amount of pills, whether the mother is giving at the right dose at the right time. When do we need to repeat microbiological test? Yes, if we are dealing with a pulmonary TB, we have to do it at the end of intensive phase and at the end of continuation phase to document that it has turned negative. Extrapulmonary, definitely we don't have an access to sample, because if we have sampled a cervical node, we don't have another sample at the end of intensive phase or continuation phase. In that cases, we have to just rely upon our clinical judgment. The test which is to be done for follow-up is either a smear or a culture. We do not do a gene expert, because gene expert is a DNA test. So even if a very low amount of dead bacilli are present in the specimen, the test sometimes can flag positive, which does not mean that the child is having active TB. So this has to be correlated clinically. So second case is a 9-year-old female who was having right knee joint pain and swelling since 2 months, restricted movement and high to moderate grade fever. The weight was okay, there was right knee arthritis present. The counts were low, HB was low, total count was low, platelets was also 1.2, ESR of 122, the TST was positive, knee joint had effusion, MRI had significant effusion with popliteal nodes which were enlarged, and occasional necrosis, not a definite finding. Synovial fluid was again exudative, CB-nat of synovial fluid was negative. She was started on antituberculous therapy by the treating doctor, but at the end of 3 to 4 months she was not having any relief and effusion was still present, therefore she was referred to our center. Is this a case of drug-resistant TB? What are the thoughts of the audience? Should we directly jump, or do we want to think again for this case? Because this is one case, knee joint effusion, where it is we can say it is a Pandora's box, we don't know what to do. So when we re-investigated again, the ESR was high. What was uncomfortable to us was the counts were consistently low. There was consistent pancytopenia in all our CBCs. The ESR was very high, 3-digit. So we took a rheumatologist opinion who advised to do a factor factor ANA, which was all negative. We went ahead and did an invasive biopsy, which didn't show any granulomas, anything suggestive of TB, and the CB-nat was negative. She was diagnosed as a case of pauciarticular JIA. We stopped the treatment, we gave treatment for JIA, and the child is doing well. So what do we want to learn here is when we see the clinical clues. TB may have persistent fever, but persistent high-grade fever going on for months, we have to think of something else. Which does not mean TB cannot come with high-grade fever, but then we should think of something else. Persistent pancytopenia going on for a period of say 2 to 3 months, again unless and until it is a bone marrow TB, which is again a rare case, we cannot get a persistent pancytopenia. 3-digit ESRs, lymph nodes were only enlarged. Matting was not reported, conglomerate was not reported, significant central caseation was not reported, and most important, the child did not have any risk factors to suspect drug-resistant TB. So which brings us to 2 questions. When do we consider drug-resistant TB in a child, and what are the factors we should look for when we are having a patient who is not responding to antituberculous therapy? So we assess the second question first. First thing, again, we should know whether it is actually a non-response or it is non-resolution of symptoms. Sometimes fever may take 4 weeks or 6 weeks to go off. Weight gain may not start sometimes till 2 or 3 months of therapy. So we have to be patient. Second thing is the patient adherent to the therapy? Is he taking the therapy properly? Is it a true non-response, or the diagnosis was actually missed, which was our case where it was actually a non-TB patient and she was being wrongly treated with antituberculous therapy? Again, whether there is an unaddressed comorbidity like a SAM or an HIV which we are missing. Is this a paradoxical reaction? Now this is a very common phenomenon in TB, especially we see it in lymph node TBs and pleural TBs. 2 or 3 months down the line when we start the treatment, suddenly the patient starts developing fever again, patient starts developing lymph nodes, they start developing effusion. Yes, we have to suspect drug-resistant TB, send the relevant samples for gene expert. If everything is negative, the patient is clinically otherwise okay, gaining weight, the diagnosis of iris comes up, it is actually a diagnosis of exclusion. And when we have gone through all this exercise and nothing has been found, this is actually a drug-resistant TB patient. Do I have time or I should stop? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, DRTB. ये आगे नहीं जा रहा है. Yeah. So when do we suspect DRTB in a child? If there is poor response to first line drugs, if the patient has been a defaulter, if there was a relapse of patient, or any of the high risk categories, like there is a definite contact with the DRTB patient, child is an immunocompromised child like an HIV child, or there is a history of death in the family because of tuberculosis. Now we don't have time, so I will skip through the drug resistant TB slides. The only change which I want to show here is the definitions of pre-XDRs and XDRs have changed. Pre-XDR is now any MDR patient resistant to H and R along with any fluoroquinolone resistance, and an XDR patient is MDR with a fluoroquinolone resistance with resistance to any of the group A drugs. Group A drugs are linezolid, bedaquiline and fluoroquinolones. So this is a change which has happened in 2021. This is a grouping of drugs. I won't go into this. This I will only like to show in pediatrics. Now we have an option of giving all oral therapy to our kids. If our child is 5 years of age and older or 15 kgs and above, we can give all oral therapy to our children, which was not there initially, and therefore more and more children are getting the benefits of an injectable free therapy. So this I will skip because there is lack of time. The third case, which was actually a TPT case or prophylaxis, I will just brush upon this chart. Now it is compulsory for all the contacts of pulmonary TB patients to get prophylaxis. So if we have a pulmonary TB index case, whether it is a 2-year-old child, whether it is a 16-year-old adolescent, or whether she is a 30 or 40-year-old mother, all ages we have to give TB prophylaxis for open case of pulmonary TB in the house. We look for symptoms of active TB. If there are symptoms of TB, we investigate for TB. If it is positive, we treat for TB. If there are symptoms but there is no TB, then we go this side of the chart. If there are no symptoms of TB, we have divided as less than 5 years and 5 to 18 years in adults. The only difference between these two groups is we are treating both. We are giving preventive therapy for both. In less than 5 years, we directly start preventive therapy without doing any tests. 5 years and above in adults, if there are facilities available, we have to do an IGRA or we have to do a Mantoux test, and if they are positive, we have to treat. That does not mean if the facilities are not available or if they are negative, you don't treat. So actually this is a little confusing part of the program. The take home message is any patient who is having an index case of pulmonary TB, rule out active TB in the household contacts. If there is no active TB, everybody goes on prophylaxis for a period of 6 months. There are two options. One, we have isoniazid, which is already known to all of us. The another option which has come is 3 months of isoniazid and rifampicin. Now this is a very welcome change. This is being made available since July 2021. Because isoniazid we have to take for 6 months and daily therapy. Isoniazid and rifampicin we have to take only once a week, a single tablet, and it is to be given for 3 months. So only 12 doses as far as prophylaxis is concerned. There is n number of studies which has shown that this has very good results as far as patient acceptance is concerned. And lastly, there is also a prophylaxis which is to be given for MDR TB patients, which was not there first. So if we have a pure MDR TB, no resistance to any fluoroquinolones, no resistance to any other drug, all the contacts get 6 months of levofloxacin after ruling out active TB. And there is a category of patients which are isoniazid monoresistant. Now again, isoniazid monoresistance level is 15 to 20% in India. So if we have an isoniazid monoresistant index case, if active TB is ruled out in the household contacts, we give 4 months of rifampicin to all the close household contacts. TB COVID, since September 2021, it is being mandatory for bidirectional TB COVID screening. That means all patients diagnosed with TB have to undergo COVID testing, and all patients diagnosed with COVID-19 or any influenza-like illness have to undergo a screening for TB. This is because the reporting has gone down, as we just saw, because of COVID. These are all the facilities which are available through the program for all the private pediatricians. So children are not miniature adults. We have to have a different scenario as far as childhood TB is concerned. We must stretch all our limits as far as childhood TB diagnosis is concerned. There is a common misnomer, pediatrics है तो sample में positive आने ही नहीं वाला है. No, please, we have to make all efforts to achieve a microbiological diagnosis. Then if we are not getting, we can start on empirical basis. We have to know when to wait and when to initiate. Like I said, in CNS TB, we can't wait for too long. We have to initiate on empirical basis. DRTB is definitely rising. India is the epicenter, but the situation is not grim because what our experience suggests, children tolerate second line drugs much better as compared to adults. The amount of ADRs or adverse drug reactions in children are much less. The best strategy is we have to always keep ourselves updated. Ladies and gentlemen, TB is a disease which is going on in India since a long time. And you know, somewhere in our day-to-day practice we think nahi TB hai to refer karenge. But time has come that all the general pediatricians at least should be able to diagnose TB and start a basic treatment for drug-sensitive TB. Drug-resistant, definitely we can refer and take help of our experts. So it's time together to end TB. Our timeline goal was set by WHO for 2030. I'm sure the goal is going to extend now because of the COVID pandemic. Thank you and greetings from our Center of Excellence at JJ. This is our Center of Excellence which we are running since the last 4 to 5 years. Thank you everybody.
Presentation. Yeah. So the two questions is one about the how far should we go in for the tissue diagnosis when we especially have a indicator of tuberculosis only in the chest, abdomen, especially as isolated enlarged lymph nodes. All signs are pointing towards TB, but in such cases, would you really pursue it to a stage where biopsy has to be done?
So abdominal, it is a little easier to do a biopsy as compared to a chest, which I would say. Definitely it is difficult than sampling a cervical node. But yes, if we have facility, especially in today's era, we have to go because many of the times they turn out to be drug resistant. Chest nodes, the sampling problem is we need an interventional radiologist, which is not always possible in all the places. In Mumbai, we have the facility of an interventional radiology. So if the node is in a place where there is no proximity to many big vessels or important structures, we definitely have to go and do an interventional radiology guided. But if we don't have these facilities, then definitely don't wait. That is the message. So if somebody is practicing in a district place or sometimes in a PSC, because I like to stress one point here, the detection gap of TB is 56% in India for children less than 15 years. So 56% is very huge. That means 56% of children are having TB which are not detected. This is from 0 to 15 years, and if we bring that down to less than 5 years, the figure reverses, that is 60%. So you know, we have to start treatment.
We are all used to the mode of the follow-up treatment of 4HR rather than 4HRE.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that E part of it?
Yeah, so this E has been introduced since 2014 by WHO, and it has been incorporated in our program since 2016. Again, the basis was increasing level of isoniazid monoresistance. So if we have isoniazid monoresistance in that patient, we would be ending up giving only one drug in the continuation phase. And that is why to have at least 2 drugs, we have had H, R and E. So even if the patient comes into that 15% of H monoresistance, we are taking care by giving 2 drugs. Because every time we may not have the facility of getting a culture positive.
Okay. And regarding the last slide, any child who has been COVID positive,
Yes.
COVID-19, is it mandatory, and what kind of screening test are you advising?
So it is
doctor?
mandatory, any child or even adult. So screening tests are basically only 2. First is symptom screening, as we saw, screen for the cardinal symptoms, and second is chest X-ray. If the symptoms are there, do a chest X-ray. That's it.
But
If the X-ray is suggestive, like if there is a miliary or a cavity or a node, then we go ahead and do a gene expert and all.
It's only for symptomatic
yes,
COVID-19
it is symptom and
patient.
X-ray chest, nothing else.
Okay. Thank you.
Most of the times for COVID, we already have done an X-ray, so that is taken care of. And second is symptom screening.
Mostly we would only in symptomatic.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
I request Dr. Sapna to felicitate our chairperson, Dr. Neeta Sabu Madam and Dr. Praveen Gokhale sir.